All right, here we go with week 8, module 8, day 2, group management strategies. I just love day 2. This is going to be a good one. Students spend a majority of the school day working in groups in the modern era. This little girl seems to be saying, yeah, everybody knows that. It's important for paraeducators to have some useful strategies for successfully managing behavior of students during these times. Remember, the teachers are depending on us to keep the chaos to a minimum, or at least to a manageable level while the group work is going on. Here's some older students. You can see this is a real classroom, and they're working in groups. This is just foreshadowing to their college careers and their careers after that. Current lesson discusses several useful methods which can be used to manage behavior while students are in groups, which, as we said, is most of the day. Okay, like everything else we've talked about, the strategies are most effective at the beginning stages of misbehavior and with minor problems. The strategy should be used in conjunction with established classroom rules and procedures. So why did we say and with minor problems? Because as we spoke about in the previous lecture, major problems, ongoing problems require behavior contracts, right? Behavior management plans. Okay, here's the first strategy: planned ignoring. Sometimes the best way to deal with student misbehavior is to ignore it. It's true. You know, there are a lot of students out there who they just sort of want to get a reaction out of you. And sometimes you can really appreciate their sense of humor. You know, you can really get why they're doing something, but you can't always grant them the enjoyment of having a joke with you, even if you appreciate that joke, because it's not conducive to an orderly classroom, we might say. And then there are the students that are on certain days of their lives more mean-spirited than that, and you can also ignore that up to a point. Your line, your choice, and the classroom teacher will help you decide when you should do planned ignoring. Here's some guidance on when to ignore behavior. When the inappropriate behavior is unintentional or not likely to reoccur. Okay. Somebody accidentally kicks a desk, no big deal. Somebody kicks the desk on purpose, possibly a big deal. When the goal of misbehavior is to gain teacher or paraeducator attention, right? You have these sort of frequent flyers that will do certain behaviors again and again, and you've got to decide how much attention you want to pay to those behaviors, as long as they are not hurting someone else. You also want to do planned ignoring when you want a behavior to decrease. Also, when there is nothing you can do. Everyone has seen these situations. It's hard to describe them, but there are just times when there's nothing you can do about it, right? Someone makes a certain bodily noise, and it's clear that they were not in control of themselves when they did so. You know, what can you do? When should we intervene, though? When there's physical danger or harm to yourself, others, or the child, right? When there is the threat of these. When a student disrupts the classroom, when they sort of turn it into their stage. When there are violations of classroom rules, or especially school policy. You can't ignore that. When there's interference with learning, this is another good time to intervene. And when the inappropriate behavior will spread to other students, okay? You know, an example of this might be a student starts making a funny noise intentionally. I don't know what the funny noise could sound like, but students around them might start making the same noise, and on and on and on and on. Here's a great example. Okay, in some classrooms, sometimes you'll get the sort of ironic politeness. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Well, someone sneezes or coughs or something like that. You know, they sort of appropriately cover their face, whatever. It's just a sneeze, no big deal. An entire section of the classroom all at once says, "Bless you." The other side of the class says, thank you. And I'm talking, it's growing, right? An entire side of the class is now saying thank you. And then the entire class or most of the class replies in unison, you're welcome, right? So you can see how this could become something that you just can't stop. What are you going to do? Run around the classroom waving your hands like this? No way. That's not going to stop it. Are you going to give every person in the classroom detention or some kind of timeout? No, you can't do that. It would overwhelm school resources. I have seen teachers do this. Not myself, but I've seen teachers give an entire classroom detention because one of the students said, what are you going to do about it? You can't give us all detention. And she said, yes, I can. I have 40 slips right here. You know, for a 38-person class, everyone went to detention that week. It overwhelmed the resources, and the school was not happy with that teacher. So we want to try to intervene early when the inappropriate behavior will spread to other students. Why would we intervene in that situation when it's not harming anyone? Well, you're going to have this happen again and again and again. Once you allow that to pass, it will happen every time. So early intervention is the best. I don't like to put it in these terms, but that example is a little bit like jail, right? On the first day, so I am told, never been there myself, but so I am told on the first day, you must make a showing of strength, right? And in our case, making a showing of strength means making sure that people hold to the rules. All right, here's another example. Jimmy, I'd like to imagine that Jimmy is the young guy with the hat on here. Jimmy comes into the classroom from recess all excited and extremely active. The result of ignoring his initial antics is that he soon gets seated and begins working. This is very realistic scenario. Providing cues to students. A lot can be done simply by using cues. These can be verbal or nonverbal. An important aspect of behavior management is developing ways to communicate with students that provide reminders that support your expectations. Okay, we've got these three big chunky nouns highlighted because they're the most important bits. Communicate, as we've said before, communication requires sending a message, having the message be received, understood, and getting back an indication that your message has been received and understood. Without that, it's not communication. And reminders, like we set reminders on our phone, this kind of thing. We've got to remind students that there are expectations in the class, and when expectations, especially on behavior, are not met, you can have negative consequences. When expectations are met, you can have positive consequences. Remember that look your mother would give you when you were young? She didn't have to say one word, but it would stop you where you were standing. Oh yeah, oops, mom's got that look. Okay, I like this. I really like this actor over here. She's got a good mom eye. It's a way to let the student know that you want their attention, or you're aware of the behavior and that you want it changed. Okay, so again, this actor is giving the mom eye, and she's, she's looking right at you, and she wants your attention. She wants you to change what you're doing. But there's the hint of a smile. There's the hint of a smile on her face as well. So it's not creating an overly negative situation, where the student feels literally, oh no, I'm in trouble with mom or dad, right? This is what you want. All these adoring students around the smiling teacher, paraeducator. These cues can also be used to reinforce positive behavior patterns as well, like reminders to continue the quality of interaction during an activity. What might this paraeducator, this teacher, be saying to the students? Probably some words of encouragement, we kind of do two things. Here are our concepts. These are not exactly college words of the day, but these are our concepts that I didn't write down in the presentation. I'm using both of these as verbs for the purposes of this discussion. When we validate, we let the students know they have done well. When we reality check, we make sure the students understand the nature of, okay, and both of these things we can do in positive ways. When we're reality checking, we are telling the student, your interpretation might not be the correct one, but we're also letting them know that their performance can change in positive ways. All right, so she has a very validating look on her face, although she might be reality checking. It's positive, it's possible and positive. These techniques, as I said before, may be nonverbal, including eye contact, physical gestures like raising your hand in silence, tapping or snapping of your fingers, coughing or clearing your throat, facial expressions like a smile, or body postures like tilting your head. This is a good one. What are you doing? What are you doing over there, right? Of course, we never want to do anything that'll embarrass a student. And this comes from the humor that we talked about earlier. We never want to direct humor at a student. We can be humorous with students. That makes the day so much better, but we're never humorous at students. Okay, here's one example. Eye contact. When a student begins to misbehave, simply establishing eye contact with him or her will oftentimes stop the behavior just like that immediately. There are a lot of students with whom this will not work, and there are a number of students that will simply avoid your gaze. Right? Example one, there are also more formal procedures that we teach students during the first week of school. Dimming or shutting the lights off. You ever seen this before? Of course. Off, on, off, on, off, on. That's a classic. But it's always, as a young student, it always bothered me. And I've talked to a lot of other people that it's bothered as well. Yeah, but if it works, if you don't have anyone with a lot of photosensitivity or something like that in the classroom, I wear these glasses because of photosensitivity. They're not even glasses. They're just blocking the blue light from giving me migraines. So it's a concern, I suppose. All right. These cues can be verbal, like reminding the entire class or a group of students which procedures to follow. Okay, so that's a reality check. That's a reality check right there. We can combine the validation with the reality check in this instance. It's good that you're doing this. We also need to do this. Using the conjunction and here is a good idea. It's good that you're doing this, and we also need to do this. Example 2, during a group activity, the volume of the classroom is rapidly increasing. You raise your hand, and the entire class does the same while remaining quiet. This is a common one. You review the classroom rule with them regarding the noise level and continue with the activity. So it may be that folks are truly working on their assignments together, and they just are doing so with elevated voices. The last thing a teacher, any kind of educator, ever wants to do is stop someone from doing their assignment, getting their learning done. It may simply be that the volume of the class is just getting to be too much, out of reasonable parameters. So we can do as we did in example 1, do a validation and do a reality check. Proximity, folks. This is we really actually do have a college word of the day. Proximity. You probably knew this word already, especially if you speak Spanish, Portuguese, Latin. Proximity. It's a $5 word. The almighty Google defines it as nearness in space, time, or relationship. Okay, when you watch a science fiction movie and a spaceship detects another spaceship about to crash into it, it says proximity alert, this kind of thing. Watch out, something is too close to us. So proximity control is another technique that people use. It's a fancy word. but it's a simple technique. How close is everyone to each other? Simply moving around the classroom can assist students in staying on task because of your proximity to them. This works well because the students know you're aware of what's going on, and it allows the classroom teacher to continue without interrupting the lesson or the flow of activity. So, as a para, we do a lot of sticking with a group, but we also do a lot of just sort of milling around the classroom. In today's lecture, we earlier spoke about not just standing over a student like this, because it tends to be intimidating and can lead to a decrease in work. But when you're moving around the classroom, that's a different thing. That's a different thing entirely. You might even get students saying, Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, can you help me over here? Here's an example. A student is teasing one of their classmates while you're presenting an activity to a small group of students. No fun. While continuing to speak, you look directly at the offending student. However, the teasing persists, so you simply move toward the student or even stand next to them for a few minutes. Okay. We've said before that this is a great teacher skill. Don't let the misbehavior derail you. Don't let it knock you off of what you're doing. As parents, we probably already know this, but remember, we're dealing with other people's kids here, right? It's a different thing. We need different approaches. So if you're presenting something, I don't have a piece of paper here. I wanted to model presenting something, but okay, this will have to do. You're sort of reading maybe off of an iPad or other device to the students what to do, and you see the behavior, the undesired behavior happening over there. You just keep on reading while you're looking at the person, right? You guys probably already know this technique, and I'm going to suggest that it probably works at least half of the time. And then when it doesn't, you can move to proximity. Proximity alert, incoming spaceship. Finally, you resort to putting your hand on his or her desk. This oftentimes can even go unnoticed by the rest of the peers of the entire class. The last thing you want to do is have everyone notice what you're doing. This is one reason why you don't stop your lesson, why you don't stop presenting. If you stopped every time kids were goofing around, you would never finish your lessons ever, right? The end result is that the student is not embarrassed or given unnecessary negative attention, and the behavior will cease. And then after that episode, you can, of course, choose to change the seating arrangement the next time folks are going to be in proximity to one another. All right, motivation. I love motivation. Student motivation is something I studied in graduate school. Motivation is a key to academic success for most students. There are a number of ways to increase the motivational level of students that you work with. Yes, that's good news for all of us. We can relate the material to their life experiences. So this is about making it relevant to them personally, which can stimulate their interest. So there is a term, here we go, college word of the day. This is literally a college term, a graduate education term, authentic materials. I know it sounds pretty obvious, like it's not a specialized term at all, but this is something that you'd be surprised a lot of people do not use these in classrooms. So for instance, and it doesn't work at all levels. But I'd say definitely by middle school, you can start using authentic materials, and before middle school as well. Authentic materials and realia, that's another one. I should write that down. They're both just real things, all right? So you use real things to teach. For example, when you're very young and you're learning to read, you read stories about dragons and tigers, and and they're talking to each other, and all this kind of thing. Great stuff, nothing wrong with it at all. But when you're 11, that doesn't speak to you, right? When you're 11, reading about your first dog, your first pet, whatever, probably doesn't speak to you. So reading about something real, something that's really happening, or using something that's real is a good way to be authentic. You might be amazed what varied interests the young students have, because they're always watching videos on YouTube and like learning how to draw things and learning how to cook things and all kinds of stuff. Once you start getting to know your students, you'll find out what their interests are, and you'll be able to make things relatable insofar as is your charge. You don't ever have to create the instructional materials. We can demonstrate an active interest in the student, right? This is what I was just talking about. We can demonstrate an active interest in the student's work or the activity. And we can use lots of praise, both verbally and non-verbally. Okay, I can't stress enough or enough times, it can't sound fake. It has to sound real. If it sounds fake, you will have the opposite effect to the one you want, right? I know you can do it. I know that you guys are able to do this. I'm just letting you know that you have to do it for 6 hours a day. Okay, you've got to be real for like 3 hours in a row, twice a day. Here's an example. Jacinta easily becomes bored and says certain tasks are too easy or the same old stuff, right? I don't want to read about the lions and tigers again. When all this happens, she will daydream. Sometimes she doesn't complete the assigned tasks because she's too bored. Well, what do we know about Jacinta? Here's an example. There's a student taking a nap here with the book. Her class has been given a worksheet of simple measurement problems involving recipes and individual ingredients. All right. While monitoring this practice activity, you notice that Jacinta is off task without making a big deal about it, right? So she feels pressure. Quietly approach and ask about her personal experience using measuring devices like these spoons here. Then she shares how she helped her dad with baking a pumpkin pie this past weekend. She discusses the use of a measuring cup, teaspoon, and a tablespoon. Aha. So we would not have learned that if we just sort of reprimanded her for being off task. Jacinta, sit up in your chair, right? The kinds of things that might happen at school. So you take a few minutes to explain how the activity you're working on directly applies to the measurement problems that they're working on. Thank her for sharing and redirect her to the assigned task and ask if she'd be willing to share with the class her personal experience with measurement. What a way to turn it around. If she agrees, if she's not not too shy to do so, this is going to be a real teaching win for you. She quickly finishes the worksheet and appears much more interested in the activity. Yay. Of course, this is the ideal outcome for Jacinta. But I wanted to give you an example, of something real to relate to when it's possible. Using humor. Okay, look at this young student. It looks like she may have just had a drinkable yogurt, which I guess has put her in a very positive mood. It's great. A light, funny, or amusing comment or statement can oftentimes decrease tension or frustration, and afterward allows everyone to feel a bit more comfortable. Here's an example. Imagine you're reviewing spelling words with the class while your supervising teacher works with a small group of students. The students sort of see the activity as boring and are less than excited about attending to the task. Recognizing their resistance, you ask the class to twirl their right index finger in the air and chant yip, and the other side chants e. Yip, e, yip, e. All right. If they'll cooperate, this can be fun. After a couple of yippies, you state, I'm really pleased to see how excited you are with the spelling review. In an ideal world, the class breaks into hysterical laughter. And after that, they're calm and more receptive. Okay, try it. It might work. Depends on the class, depends on their affective filter. Okay, oh my goodness, do we have a daily double? We do have a daily double. Here we go, guys. Okay, here's another thing you're going to hear at university. Now, I'm sure many of you have already gone to university or college or what have you. But if you go and study early childhood education or education in general, probably going to come across this term, affective filter. And what does affect mean? It just means emotion. You guys know what a filter is. A filter is kind of like a screen. All right, so every person has within them an affective filter. So here's my student, perhaps smiling, I don't know, midway, okay? Affective filter. You bring your emotions with you wherever you go. Your emotions sort of color, influence how you interact at a particular time, how you're feeling. Right? So if someone's feeling very negative, then they don't want to do anything you ask, right? They're feeling very positive, they might be more enthusiastic about it. Anyhow, affective filter, we need a nose, don't we? Affective filter is something we bring with us wherever we go. When we use humor, it can be done constructively to decrease levels of anxiety. Anxiety, is an emotion, and thereby increase students' academic performance. Look at these guys. I want to be the educator that is creating this reaction, don't you? Second example, you can feel the tension in the air as you distribute a language arts examination to your students. As you're doing so, you explain they don't have to answer questions 21 through 30. Aha, surprise. There are only 20 questions. Once each student has a copy, they hurriedly look to find items 21 through 30, only to find that there are only 20 items. Everybody sighs and there's a lot of smiles. It can be surprising how students that are normally quite confident can all of a sudden, sort of freeze up when a test comes around, or any sort of evaluation. All of us react differently to being evaluated. It is part of our affect, part of our emotion, coming from our previous experience, all that kind of stuff. So taking the tension out of it, if it's possible to do, it's something we should certainly try. But any student is going to come across a task, an assignment, or a situation that causes them difficulty. A lot of students will go ahead and request assistance from teachers or from staff or from peers when it's okay to do so. Others will simply just stop working altogether and not know what to do next. It's those students we need to attend to because trouble can occur. We need to get students back on track, clearly. And as a para, you can be most helpful in getting the student back on task by doing one of these things. Doing or solving the problem with the student. Clearly we can't really do this on a test, but if it's a formative assessment rather than a summative assessment, it's like a little quiz, not a big test. There may be some leeway there. The classroom teacher will let you know if you can or can't. Reviewing the directions, right? Going back and reviewing what's written at the top, because you might be surprised how often people simply don't read the directions. And so if we can kindly remind them of what the expectations are, it might help. We can also help by providing another example or demonstrating. Provide a parallel example that might help them to get it. And we can help by supplying them the correct answer as a model. Here's an example. A student named Louise is experiencing difficulty with her work. She becomes increasingly off task. And by providing just a little bit of assistance, you can get her back on task. While monitoring a classroom activity, you notice Louise is distracted and not working on her assigned task. So you approach her and ask what she's to be doing. You work through an example with her and help her solve the question that's been asked. Okay, so that was our first method, was to work on it with the student. Okay, what about values, things that we believe to be important? Oftentimes you can appeal to a student's values when intervening in problem situations. Their desire is to be liked by others, isn't everybody's. to do the right thing, to be treated with respect, etc. To help them, you could do one of the following things. Appeal to the relationship between yourself and the student. Remember, we start from the first day establishing good relationships with as many students as we possibly can, so that we can use that credit that we build up with them to get what we want, which is for them to behave in class. For example, when you swear at me when you're upset, it makes me feel bad. This is an I statement, right? So we're appealing to the relationship. We can appeal to the natural consequences of a specific behavior. I know you're frustrated, but if you break your pencil, then you'll have to replace it with your own money, something like that. You know, if a student intentionally breaks a pencil at school, you're probably going to be talking to their parents about it pretty soon. And they'll have something to contribute to the conversation. Okay, we can also appeal to a student's need to be liked. For example, your friends may be disappointed with you if you continue to boss them around and interrupt them when they're speaking. Now, if the answer is, I don't care, then you've got somewhere else to go. Appeal to the student's self-respect. I know you'll be very upset with yourself at the end of school if you rip up your daily behavior rating card. It's difficult for both teachers and paras to compete with certain objects, either found at school or brought from home. They can be really simple things like rubber bands, combs, etc. Oftentimes, in order to gain students' undivided attention, you might be required to deal with these types of items. A lot of times, the removal of such belongings will only lead to further conflict. One way to avoid such conflict is to simply state the options and their consequences. Okay, like this. You can either put it away immediately, or I will put it away until the end of the day. Now, when I was a youngster in school, this is not what people said. Instead, they said, put it away or it's mine. That's not something we want to say. And indeed, I did have various items that I shouldn't have brought to school taken away, and they were never seen again. They were never seen again. So these days, it's not something we can do. Just to be clear, here in California, we cannot just take things away and put them in the trash or whatever people do with them. And this is especially important when we're talking about something like a student phone. At a lot of schools, the use of phone, any use of a phone means it gets taken away. But where does it get taken away to? What's the teacher doing with that phone? You know, are they ordering things on Amazon or with it, or right, whatever crazy thing you might come up with. To make sure that no one's doing that, what we do is we immediately take it to the office, right? If a phone is confiscated, straight to the office. You can have the student take it to the office for you, right? That way, it's never even in your custody, right? You're maximally protected. However, by taking a strong interest in the object and then politely asking to see and handle it, you can go about it this way. It sort of takes the bite out of the interaction. Once you've got it in your hands, it's in your possession, you have the option of returning it with a firm request that it disappear for the rest of the school day, week, or year, or to keep it with a promise to return it at the end of the day and or the week. I want to emphasize that we have the potential to create mistrust here. If we sort of make the student feel they have been tricked into handing us the item, whatever it is, and then, ha, 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 I got it from you, now it's gone. That builds mistrust, and not just between us and the student, but between us and the students around us. So we don't want that to be the vibe. We don't want that to be the theme that gets communicated. So the technique works the best if you already have a good relationship with a student. And even if you just have a so-so relationship with a student, it's only going to work if you're being genuine. Right? Here's an example. You see a student twirling a streamer that's attached to the eraser of his pencil. You approach him and ask to see the brightly colored streamer. May I see that? And then what you do is you just take the streamer off and the pin, the straight pin that attached it to the tip of the eraser, and ask him to stop by after school to pick it up so it doesn't get lost. He'll be sure to remember to take it home. All right, thanks for sticking with me through Module 8, Week 8, Day 2. We've got one more day, and I'll look forward to seeing you then.